Good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, good morning, good morning to you. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Daring Dialogues. I am your host, Shantae Charles. Boy, have we got something to talk about today. Please, please, please share this broadcast out because we're about to be on and cracking today. We're reading, first of all, we're going to be reading from the book Love Like That by Dr. Les Parrott. 5 Relationship Secrets from Jesus. We talked about the first 2, and that is number 1, to be mindful, and number 2, to be approachable. And now we're jumping into the third principle, which is to be graceful. So to be mindful, to be approachable, to be graceful. And so we're going to jump into the first half of this section, and we're going to be learning a little bit about grace. Going to be talking about it in the context of Jesus's grace for us, the grace giving of Jesus. And we're going to stop there for today because I do have another important topic for the second half of the broadcast that I want to talk about, and that is going to be Facebook singles groups. So if you are a single, if you are part of several singles groups, even some of you all who are a part of dating groups, married groups, courting groups, please go ahead and share this broadcast because I want to address something that I see happening, and I don't see it being addressed even after I have brought it to the attention of people who run these groups. So that's why I'm addressing it. Okay. So I have gone to the people who run the groups and I've said, look, you might want to get a hold of this. This could become a potential problem. They have not responded back. So I'm going to address it openly and publicly. That way, if you see it, you'll know how to respond for yourself, especially young women. So if you are single, please make sure you share this broadcast out to your fellow singles. All right. So today we're coming from Love Like That. We're learning about the 5 relationship secrets of Jesus, and we are on the third relationship secret, which is being graceful. Being graceful. I hope that everybody is having a great and wonderful day today. Remember, as we get into this dialogue, if you want to chime in, you can press the double smiles. Obviously, if I don't recognize who you are, I'm not going to answer. All right, because I don't want just random speech happening. But if I see you in the chat group and I know you've been in here and you want to chime in, I will add you in to comment. Just remember that after you exit out, you'll have to go out of the Periscope and come back in order for your sound to keep going. All right, that's what we noticed about this new feature. All right, so once you log off from making a comment, go out of the Periscope and then come back in and you should be fine. All right. So let's talk about graceful. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace, which is a scripture from the Message Bible where Jesus is speaking, and the Message Bible has translated it into modern day English. And it says, learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I'd like to see you leaning forward in your chair a bit more, Les. I slowly scooted toward the edge of my seat, placed my elbows on my knees, and loosely touched the tips of my fingers together. Can you not do that with your fingers? It comes off as a subtle power play. This move right here. Feeling incredibly self-conscious, I move my hands to rest on my knees. Good. Now give plenty of eye contact, but don't make it a staring contest. The coaching was coming to me through a wireless earphone from a team of 3 psychologists carefully observing me through a two-way mirror, he said. Are you aware that you're bouncing your right foot like you're nervous? Well, of course I'm nervous. I'm in my first counseling session. This wasn't a role play. My patient knew he was seeing a graduate student, a psychologist in training, and I knew that I was going to be of little help. I felt a little like a barber giving his first haircut, and it wasn't going to be pretty. Remember, Les, one of my instructors whispered through my earpiece, it's more about attitude than technique. You got to feel a genuine sense of acceptance for this person. They were teaching me what is called in psychology unconditional positive regard. Some of us operate our life from this place, and some of us have to learn to operate our life from this place. I'll say it again. Unconditional positive regard, one of the fundamentals of effective counseling. The idea is to convey an authentic sense of warmth and respect for the person, regardless of what they are saying or what they've done. A lot of people struggle to do this, okay? It separates the behaviors, as we talked about yesterday, it separates behaviors from the person in order to offer them an attitude of grace. Because again, and someone sent me a snippet of R. Kelly's interview that he did recently, because I have not watched any of the series or any of that. I've just been reading the articles and the reports and all of that. All right. And one of the things that he said, I was like, we just talked about this yesterday. One of the things he said was he's not Lucifer, and that people are calling him the devil. He said he is not the devil. And if you think back to what we talked about yesterday, we talked about the fact that when you relegate people and call them a demon, demons are not deliverable. Remember, you can't come back from that. So for all the people who are saying he should pay or he should do the time for the crimes or whatever they find out, the reality is after he does time, or if he does time for the crime, there's still got to be a plan of rehabilitation for him. Why? Because he's not a devil. He may be influenced. He may be influenced by the ungodly elements, but he himself is not a demon. And there's a lot of people who cannot say that because of all the stuff that he's done. They're just saying he's a devil. He just needs to just go away for forever, and nobody ever needs to talk about it or discuss it or offer some sort of rehabilitation for him. That means you don't have an attitude of grace. That's what that means. And just understand that when you don't have an attitude of grace, there could come a time in your life where you will receive back the same attitude that you put out into the earth, whether you feel like you deserved it or not. All right. So this therapeutic approach enables a person to drop their pretenses, confess the worst parts of themselves, and discover the profound relief of knowing they are still accepted and valued as a person. A person can have done some really horrible human acts, right? There are some human beings that have done some very despicable things, but they're still human beings. So it's not saying that they don't deserve to do time. It's not saying that what they did wasn't horrible. It's saying after they do the time and after they have consequences for what they have done, at the end of the day, they're still a soul to God. You may not care 2 cents for them, but they're still a soul to God. And if you cannot reconcile that in your mind, and if you feel like I don't have a plan for that kind of person, you may not have the grace to minister to those kinds of people. There are some people who do, and there are some people, they don't have the grace for that. And they will actually do more harm than good. So it provides a judge-free space for them to reveal their faults and their failings. And if you think that's easy, think again. Why? Because unconditional acceptance goes against the deep grain of every human being. We are conditional by nature. We want people to earn our respect, most of us. We want people to win our acceptance. Most of us do not offer up favor without people meriting it. And we quickly dismiss people who slip up. There are some people, they're like, I'll give you one chance. You got one chance to slip up. And when you slip up, you are gone. You are out of my life. You have blown it kaput. Bye bye. See you no more. All right. No matter that we have plenty of failings ourselves and we expect second and third and fifth and 10th and 20th chances to get it right, we oftentimes do not give people the same grace that we expect of ourselves. And again, that comes with our human nature. So no matter what, that we have these plenty failings ourselves, judgmentalism rules our reflex. It is a reflex for us to want to automatically judge a situation, which is why the Lord says, judge nothing before the time. When all the Jussie Smollett stuff was first came out, you can go to my Daring Dialogues page. I wasn't posting about it. Why? There were not enough facts to determine anything, and there still aren't enough facts to determine anything. There's enough facts to know that both parties on both sides, something went down and nobody is telling the full truth. That's what we can determine right now. That's about it. So it's probably going to take some more weeks for the full story to come out. All right. Earl Nightingale said this: when you judge others, you do not define them, you define yourself. So judgmentalism rules our reflexes. It is reflex for us to want to make a decision about what we see or what we hear. Criticism is at the ready. Fault finding seems to be bred into our bones. We like to hold people accountable and we like to keep score, even though the scriptures plainly tells us that divine love is not a scorekeeper. But in our mind, our nature wants to go to scorekeeping. All right. Our nature seeks fairness and justice, not necessarily mercy and grace. We want fair, we want just. We want fair, we want just. Mercy, it has been said, is getting spared from bad things you deserve, and grace is getting good things you don't deserve. Grace is getting good things that you don't deserve. As author Max Lucado puts it, mercy gave the prodigal son a second chance. Grace gave him the feast. Grace, of all the loving qualities that are most arresting, most striking in the life of Christ, grace for me is the toughest. I love the idea of being a grace giver, he says. I'm with Karl Barth, who said, laughter is the closest thing to the grace of God. I want more unrestrained, uproarious grace in my life. I want spontaneous moments of grace with others in my life. But I struggle, maybe like you, because grace is a gift. It's unconditional, and it can't be earned or achieved. This is why we must have grace for others. Because there are going to be people in your life that don't deserve a moment of grace. But if you are a child of God, you know how to give grace to people. All right? You know how to do this. It comes from a heart that requires nothing in return. I know. Everybody wants something for something in this life. Grace says, you don't owe me anything in return. Grace is by definition unfair. It does not necessarily make sense. And that is the point. If you want to love like Jesus, you can't limit your love only to people who deserve it. Think about that. This is why we get people who say things like, I only love my family. Because they're limiting their love to the people that they think deserve it. And even in that case, some people don't love their entire family. The grace giving of Jesus. Aware of our built-in resistance to be grace givers, Jesus modeled it time and again, perhaps nowhere more dramatically than when he's interrupted early in the morning while teaching in the temple. This is actually probably one of my favorite incidences in scripture, because to me, it speaks so much to the character of Jesus. It speaks to the character of the crowd. It speaks to the character of the woman. It speaks to the character of the people who brought the woman in front of Jesus. Now, imagine this. You're teaching a Bible study, and someone busts into the Bible study, and they drop a butt naked person down in front of you and says, look, we caught him in the act. Now, had they had the technology of today, that probably would have been streamed, probably would have been live streamed, right? World Star Hip Hop would have gotten a hold to it. There would be a big article about preacher has porn star or preacher has a naked Bible study, something outrageous, right? But this is what happens. Jesus is in the temple teaching. It's early in the morning, and a group of puffed up Pharisees and teachers of the law barge in on his class. They interrupt Bible study. Yeah, World Star, YouTube, Facebook Live, Snapchat Live, IGTV with a reality show afterwards because of how it was handled. She would probably get a reality TV show contract. So these Pharisees and these teachers of the law, they barge in on his class, and they push this terrified woman in front of Jesus and his students. A woman who has been caught red-handed, guilty of adultery. Following their custom, the woman is shamed beyond humiliation by being stripped to the waist. The woman is shamed. Now, most of us know it takes two people to commit adultery, right? This is not a story about the woman caught in masturbation. This is a story about the woman caught in adultery, which means that there was a partner involved. But this story does not tell us about any partner involved. So they push this terrified woman in front of Jesus and his students, a woman who's been caught guilty of adultery. She does not try to defend herself. She does not try to say, oh, it wasn't me. She does not make excuses for what she has done. Okay. Following their custom, she's stripped to the waist according to their custom. She's defenseless. She's cowering before Jesus. She's on the ground. They threw her to the ground and treated her like trash. Just understand that. The religious. The spectacle from the Pharisees' perspective is designed not so much to humiliate this woman or punish her. She is merely a tool, as most times happens with religion. Get that? Many times, it's not even about what we think it's about. They just shamed this woman. They humiliated her. They used her as a tool of shame because they were really after discrediting Jesus. So they wanted to trap Jesus. They wanted to reveal Jesus as some heretic in front of all the people coming to hear his teaching in the temple. Oh, you think he's a teacher of the law? Well, we're going to give him a little lesson in the law and see what he does with it. That's what this was about. This was about trying to show people that Jesus was not really a valid teacher, that Jesus was somehow invalid in that he would break the law and thereby be disqualified from people following him as a leader. So, Jewish law handed down by Moses specifies death by stoning for anyone caught in adultery. But they're also supposed to bring two parties. Roman law, however, forbids the Jews from carrying out executions. So the Pharisees, thinking they were incredibly clever by catching Jesus off guard while he's teaching, they want to see how he will handle this clear-cut case of either following the law of Moses or the law of Rome. So you say you're a teacher of the law. Well, according to Moses' law, you're supposed to kill her right here. But if you don't follow Moses' law and you follow Roman law, then now we can paint you as someone who does not follow the law of Moses. So they wonder, will this rebel Jesus, this notorious for being merciful Jesus, this preaching forgiveness Jesus, will he let the adulteress off the hook? In the mind of the Pharisees, that would settle the matter because clearly revealing Jesus as a heretic. If you let her off, then you can't say you follow the law of Moses, and we can label you as a heretic, and we can disqualify your message, and we can go on about our business. So they think that they have trapped him in an impossible situation. Now what do you say? They demand. We brought this woman before you. She's butt naked in the middle of your Bible study. Roman law says spare her life. The law of Moses says kill her. So which one are you going to follow? But Jesus does not buy into their scheme. Rather than speak, Jesus bends down and starts to write on the ground. A lot of scholars say that they believe that Jesus might have been writing what each man's transgressions were in the sand. Nobody really knows what he was writing. But we do know that the oldest of the Pharisees started backing away first. So he just went down the line, and one by one, they all backed away from what they were accusing her of. So what is he writing? Maybe he's writing their names. Maybe he's writing down the fact that they were the ones committing adultery with her. We don't know. Maybe he was listing sins that they had committed, and maybe he was exposing their sins and writing them in the sand. Or maybe he was writing down the other laws. The Bible doesn't say. It simply tells us that Jesus stands up and says something that nobody expected him to say. Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. Jesus took away everybody's qualifications for stone throwing with that one statement. And he's still doing it today. If there's anybody who can throw a stone, it's going to have to be the person who has not committed any transgressions. That's basically what he was saying. And he continued to write on the ground. As the statement hung in the air, these religious leaders who were dressed in their finery began to obviously feel as exposed as the woman that they had dragged half naked into the temple. One by one, they slipped away. When it is just Jesus and the woman standing there. Notice Jesus does not need an audience to rebuke you. Somebody knows what I'm talking about. Jesus doesn't need an audience to rebuke you. He will wait till everybody has gone. He will wait till everybody has disappeared. When there were no more accusers to be found, Jesus asked, "Where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she answers. This is called the law of Gelus in Old Testament, Numbers 5 and 29. Thank you, Apostle. He says, neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin. He doesn't say, go and keep sinning. He doesn't say, I got you off the hook this time. He says, go and sin no more. Now, think about that. If Jesus said, go and sin no more, he would not tell you to go do something that was impossible. Just let that marinate, all right? So she was saved rather than stoned. The guilty woman is given grace and not guilt. We all, there's people around here passing out guilt like it's Kentucky Fried Chicken or something, just handing it out, buckets of guilt. But Jesus doesn't do that. He gives her grace for her guilt. And with this grace, Jesus allows her to have a new life. Jesus sets the rewind, he sets the restart button. He hits restart on her life and says, go and sin no more. Christ accepts us as we are, Walter Trobisch says, but when he accepts us, we cannot remain as we are. You cannot tell me you are having an encounter with the living God who has forgiven your sins and you are not changed and transformed by that. There's no way. There is absolutely no way you can say, I had an encounter with Christ. I have been transformed by Christ, and you walk away and you're still doing the same. You cannot study the life of Jesus and avoid his life-altering grace. He is the personification of grace. He acknowledges the ugliness of sin, but chooses to see us beyond it. In each of the four Gospels, Jesus radiates grace not only in his teachings, but in his life, not only with the woman caught in adultery, but also with the tax collector, and also with a Roman soldier, and also with a Samaritan woman who had serial husbands, and also with a shame-filled woman who was known for her ways. I'll put it that way. Grace runs rampant in the life of Jesus. Jesus did not identify the person with his sin, but rather saw his sin as something alien, something that did not really belong to them, something from which he could free them and bring them back to their real self. And your real self is in Christ, and that self is not practicing sin. So when Jesus looks at us, he sees who we are and who we can be. Oh my, if only we could see the same. Now, nowhere did Jesus more clearly separate the sin from the sinner than in the last moments of his earthly life. After unspeakable and heartless torture, Roman soldiers took Jesus the Nazarene a short distance from Jerusalem's city wall to a place the locals call Golgotha, or the place of the skulls. They initiate the barbaric ritual of nailing him to a cross. Typically, they begin by giving the victim a mild painkiller, not as an act of mercy, but to make it easier for them to nail their limbs to the wooden beams. Jesus refuses the medicine to remain lucid. Two soldiers put all their weight on his extended arms as another drives 6-inch iron nails through each hand. His feet are flexed at an extreme angle, lapped one over the other, and nailed into place. They lift the cross up, guiding the base into a hole in the ground with a jarring thud. As the ruthless death squad studies the cross to keep it upright, Jesus, who hasn't spoken in hours, begins to whisper a prayer. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. Most of us, somebody calls us out of our name, and we ready to throw people into hell. Okay. They are doing the most inhumane thing possible to Jesus. And he's saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. We're not there yet, y'all. We're not there. We're not there. We're not there. We still got to grow. Grace beyond measure. Not only was Jesus suffering physically from this torment, he was the object of taunts and verbal abuse from the Roman killers and onlookers. You who are going to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself and come down from your cross. Some of us can't even handle verbal abuse. We can't handle it. We can't handle taunts. We can't handle people talking bad about us. We can't handle people talking about our family. We can't handle it. We ready to beat people up at the verbal abuse. We ready to clap back at the verbal abuse. And Jesus is like, y'all not there yet. Y'all, we need to grow. We need to grow, don't we, Apostle? We can't stand somebody talking about us. We can't stand being rejected. We can't stand being ostracized. We can't stand being sabotaged. Don't we understand more than that happened to Jesus? And he said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. The religious leaders began to mock him too. They said he saved others, but he cannot save himself. Enduring unimaginable suffering, the Nazarene offers grace and forgiveness to his persecutors. If I'm offering grace and forgiveness to people I already love, what am I doing that's beyond the norm? His grace giving doesn't stop there. Jesus, 33 years old, hanging a few feet above the earth between two robbers, minutes before his death, has one more act of grace to give. One of the criminals begins to hurl insults at Jesus. Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us. The fellow felon who's next to him on the other side rebukes his fellow crook, and he says, we are being punished because we actually did something wrong. Hello? We are getting our just desserts for what we have done. But this man hasn't done anything wrong. And then he turns to Christ and says, remember me when you enter into your kingdom. And Jesus tells him, don't worry, I will. Today, you will join me in paradise. Jesus could have rained down condemnation on the other guy. Notice Jesus didn't even address the other guy. Oh my God. Jesus did not spend, good morning. Jesus did not spend his last breath condemning the other man. Hello. He could have condemned that man to a cold-hearted death. They were all dying, right? He could have prayed for God to strike the people down on the ground who were talking about him. Right, prophet. But Jesus, the man of unconditional acceptance, even in his last breath, gave grace. He was giving grace to his last breath and came back, of course, and gave more grace. But he stayed in character. He stayed in the nature of who he was until his last breath. Edward Herbert said this, he that cannot forgive others breaks the bridge over which he himself must pass. So let's look at the word grace. And then next week, we're going to talk about what keeps us from being grace givers. And I want to look at the word grace. We're going to pause there because I do want to talk about these Facebook groups. All right. I'm an admin for several of them, but I want to talk specifically about what I see happening in singles Facebook groups that you guys need to be aware of. So let me cover grace. Grace, the noun. Jesus rarely used the term grace, but he talked about the concept frequently. Grace is most often linked with the term favor, as in God's unmerited favor. It doesn't require earning merit badges. We don't have to do something to get it. Grace is an excuse me. Grace is an undeserved and unconditional gift. As Paul puts it, for by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God. Trace the Greek root of grace, charis, which is where we get the word charisma or charismatic, and you will find the word meaning cheerful or happy. Trace the same word in Hebrew, ken or chen, and it means to bend or stoop. So grace, when combining these two origins, means to actually stoop down to help, or to gladly stoop down, or to gladly humble yourself for another. It's ultimately what God did in sending Jesus to walk amongst us. This is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him, or he sent his Son to show us grace, or what grace looks like. As Philip Yancey said in What's So Amazing About Grace, quote, while every other religion offers a way to earn approval, only Christianity dares to make God's love unconditional and unearned. A story is told of a group of Oxford professors who were discussing the uniqueness that Christianity offered to the world. Some said it was creation or the cross. Others suggested the Bible, miracles, and hope. When C.S. Lewis came in the room, the group asked him what he thought Christianity brought to the table that other religions did not. Without hesitation, Lewis responded and said, that's easy. Grace. Hello. Grace is central to those who follow Jesus, and it's so central that the Apostle Paul said the church was founded on the gospel of the grace of God. How do you know you're hearing the gospel of God? Because you hear grace. A gospel without grace is a gospel full of rules and requirements, and good God, ain't no grace on it. All right. The term grace occurs well over 100 times in the New Testament. The gospel of grace is truly from God. Humans would have never imagined it. He's right. Because we always want to punish somebody or make somebody pay for something. Again, that's that nature on the inside of us. Our nature is to honor the virtuous and punish the guilty. But God is happy to give unconditional acceptance and unmerited grace to all who will receive it. And as much as God gives grace, people will get upset with God about who he gave the grace to, because in our minds, we want to punish people. Say it ain't so. We want to punish people. And when we see they're not punished and they're getting grace, we get upset. And God is like, so you can get grace, but they can't. Huh? Is that it? Mm-hmm. It usually is it. So we're going to stop there. If you're interested in getting the book, it's called Love Like That by Dr. Les Parrots. All right. Now let's talk about these Facebook groups. Put some hearts on the screen, or put up a little hand, or put up a little heart symbol if you are a part of a Facebook singles group. All right. So here's what I have been seeing. I said I was not going to address this. I said I was not going to address this unless I did not hear back from the people who run the groups. All right. And I'm addressing this because 9 times out of 10, it's probably not just going on in the groups that I see. I am in some Facebook singles groups because people added me. And they added me because they said, please offer and share some articles, some quotes, some things in there that can encourage single people, right? Hearts were for a great topic. Okay. They added me because they said, okay, you're married. If we just have single people in here talking to single people, it becomes an echo chamber, meaning there's only so much advice that single people can really offer single people about being married because they're not married. That sounded reasonable to me. I was like, okay. So for the most part, I just sit back. I don't really offer a whole lot of comments on the post. I do read them, right? I do pray for the singles that are in the group. But in a couple of groups, I am noticing a pattern of young men who are in the groups, and they're now trying to school the young single women as to what they need to do or who or how they need to be in order to find a mate. Now, there's a biblical reason why you just shouldn't do that. Okay, and you can find that in Titus 2. There's a biblical reason why Titus 2 says that men should really be addressing men and women should really be addressing women. All right. Part of it is just wisdom. There are certain things that a woman deals with that only a woman can speak to a woman about. There are certain things that a man deals with that only a man can speak to a man about. I don't have those parts, so I'm not going to be trying to talk to a man about those parts. All right? But here's the other thing that I see happening. I'll give you an example because some of you all may be in this group. And so this is, again, not pinpointing one particular person because I've seen this behavior in more than one group. All right. Putting up posts, if you're a young man, putting up posts about your future wife. All right. It started with a post about to my future spouse. And this person wrote this long, flowery, everything they want to say to their future spouse, and they put it online. I was like, okay, I'm looking. Then the next week, it was this person put up 2 plates of food and said, I cooked this wonderful food and, I'm making food. I'm preparing for my future spouse and I cook for 2 and I like to set a plate for 2 when I eat. Okay, that's creepy to me, but I'm just like, okay, I'm just looking. I'm like, nobody's going to say anything about this? Okay. And then the person puts up a post about presents for their spouse. And they're saying, hey, I went to this jewelry store. You're laughing, but I'm serious. They're like, hey, I went to this jewelry store and I'm shopping for my future spouse. All right. Now, of course, the single ladies in the groups are going wild over these posts. They're going wild about this particular person. And they're like, oh my gosh, they're so sweet. They're so romantic. Blah, 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 blah. Right? Here's the problem with that. If you're telling 4,000 people, 5,000 people, 10,000 people, however many thousands of people are in a group, if you're telling them what you are planning to do for your future spouse, where is the specialness of that for your future spouse? Jonathan, stop. Oh God. He said this sounds like the beginning of a scary movie. Exactly. So, all right. I gotta stop. I gotta stop laughing. Oh God, y'all excuse me. Woo, okay, for real, he gonna abduct y'all. Listen, okay. And so I gotta stop laughing because this is serious. Jonathan, stop. Okay. The problem is that he is grooming. Okay, that's what that's called. So for the single sisters out here who don't understand how grooming works, okay, he is fishing with his posts. He's fishing with his posts. He's trying to figure out who's vulnerable, okay, who is buying into what he's saying, and he's fishing for victims. And he's using the language of relationship, and he's using the language of to my future spouse to reel you in. And unfortunately, there's a lot of women who are being reeled in by these posts. Okay. So I did inbox the administrators. Exactly. I did inbox the administrators to say, hey, you may want to keep your eyes on this particular person because of the kinds of posts that they're putting in your group. All right. So he is fishing, and he's going to reel someone in because nobody is checking these posts. Nobody is saying that this is inappropriate for this kind of group. Yes, you can write stuff to your future spouse. You can pray for your future spouse. I've done it. But I wasn't posting it online, and I wasn't going telling everybody what I want to do with my future spouse. All right? So there is a way that you can have a desire for something and not be in a position where it looks like you are fishing for compliments or you're fishing for a relationship. And if you're telling 4,000 people, again, where is the specialness of that for your mate when they finally do come along? All right. And if you're making plates of food for you and the imaginary person, that's a little bit on the Lady Apostle, help me out. That's a little bit on the psychotic side. All right. So let me talk real quickly as we end. I want to talk, and I'm using the acronym predatory. Okay. For those of you taking notes, predatory behavior. Predatory behavior. How to spot predatory behavior online, especially if you are a single and you're participating in singles groups. Undiagnosed BH disorder, listening, thinking, think I missed something. Lady Apostle, I'm talking about singles Facebook groups, and I'm talking about gentlemen who are in these groups who are posting these very transparent, elaborate posts about to their future spouse or to their future wifey, etc. And some of the examples of posts I gave were this person saying, hey, I'm cooking for my future spouse and I've made 2 plates of food for myself. And literally they posted themselves with 2 plates of food. Like, who does that? God is not pleased. You are not managing your resources, brother. Posting things like posting jewelry saying, hey, I bought this for my future spouse. I don't know who she is yet, but this is for her. Those kinds of posts. They're fishing in singles Facebook groups for vulnerable women. Women who are vulnerable to this kind of message. And I'm talking about it. He's luring desperate women. Exactly. And I'm talking about it because this is happening in Christian Facebook singles groups. So I want single ladies in these groups, I want you to be careful. All right. When you see somebody posting those kinds of things, they are fishing, they are baiting, they are grooming. Okay. That's what that's called. It's called grooming. So let me give you this acronym predatory. Some signs to look out for. P. Many times, people who are predatory tend to present themselves as a victim in most situations. Yeah, they do think it's spiritual. That's why I'm addressing it, because it's not spiritual. They're actually being groomed. Because the women who respond, those are going to be the women whose DMs that he slide into, and he's going to be seeing several of them at the same time. They're not going to know it. That's how grooming happens. So, I mean, it's usually somebody saying, I've been hurt, I've been wounded, da, 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 da. They give you their sob story, and this can be male or female, right? We're just talking about, I just gave you the example of the male. But it's a person presenting themselves as a victim in most situations. Anytime you talk to them, they are always the victim in their relationship story. It was never their fault. They don't ever tell you what they did wrong. R, They refuse to respect boundaries. Predatory people refuse to respect boundaries. So if you tell them, don't slide into my DMs, an hour later, they'll be back in your DMs with another message telling you they think you beautiful. Hey, beautiful. How you doing? Hi, sweetie. What's up? Whatever. They don't respect boundaries. They refuse to respect boundaries. E, they engage too deeply too soon. They engage with you too deeply too soon. You just met this person 24 hours ago and they want to tell you their whole life story. They want to invite you on a date. They want to come see you, etc. Predatory, red flag. E, that's engages too deeply too soon. D, some of them will display aggression. If you call out what they're saying, if you tell them, hey, brother, it's really not your place to be advising women on how to be women according to scripture, and they get aggressive with you, that's a red flag. All right. Displays of aggression or microaggression. A, they like to take advantage. They are quick to take advantage of a situation. TMI, transparency overload. I'm telling you, social media is not the place. Social media is not your personal journal. Can I say that? Is that a good way to say it? Social media is not your personal journal. If you got personal stuff to talk about, get yourself a physical journal and tell it all your problems. Because Facebook is not designed for that kind of transparency. The reality is Facebook is actually a piece or an arm of our government and how they collect data from you. This is how they know to go and arrest certain people at their house, because TMI, transparency overload. Yes, these posts are therapy sessions for many, and it shouldn't be. You need to go register with a licensed therapist. You need to go register with a counselor. All right? Because it's data collection. That's what Facebook is. Facebook is data collection. All right? And Lady Apostle, please, you can book her for counseling. Oh, they are opportunistic. They are opportunistic and controlling. They are opportunistic and controlling. They will take advantage of what you write online. This person is now collecting. He's now collecting names of people who are interested. They're opportunistic. All right. R, they give reckless declarations. It is reckless for you to be posting stuff online about what you plan to do with your future spouse and you have no spouse in sight. Somebody's not going to like that truth, but it is what it is. It is reckless for you to be posting what you plan to do with your future spouse and you have no spouse in sight. All right. Soul care is in order. Yes. And lastly, they are quick to yield to their emotions and their fantasy life. This person is engaging in their fantasy life. And thousands of people are buying into it. You don't even know if this person is actually married. They're just inside the Facebook singles group talking about their future spouse. You don't know anything beyond what they're sharing. That is TMI. That's inappropriate for the setting. All right. And that's presenting a message that's supposed to be to your future spouse, which is supposed to be one person, right? It's supposed to be one person. but you're putting it before thousands of women. If I'm wrong, somebody tell me. All right? If I'm wrong, if I'm just imagining what I'm seeing in these groups, somebody tell me. If you think I'm over concerned, somebody tell me. But I have notified the administrators of a couple of groups now, and I'm like, okay, this person is in your group that you started. And if they pull someone from your group and something happens to that male or female, all right? If something happens to that male or female, and there comes some legal investigation around it, and they can pinpoint, they can trace a line all the way back to the group you started, and they're looking at what they've done, and you have not done anything to protect yourself and to curtail their behavior, that's going to be on you. So I erred on the side of caution. I said, let me come on and let me talk about this really quickly. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this, but you do need to be aware. It's called social responsibility. You have a social responsibility when you are using social media to use it responsibly. All right. If somebody feels like you're harassing them, if somebody feels like, you're sending them inappropriate content, if someone feels like you're in their inbox and they don't want you in their inbox and they say, stop inboxing me, or they block you, then that's what happens. Okay. But again, use social media responsibly. When somebody makes it clear that your actions or your behavior is making them feel uncomfortable, if they're not comfortable with how you're talking to them or how you're approaching them, then make sure you actually respect their boundaries and curtail what it is you're saying or you're doing. All right. So anybody want to come on and anybody have any comments about either topic today, what we've talked about? You can hit the 2 smiles and I will add you in. So we got a few minutes here. Prophet Jonathan, you want to say something to the men? Hit the 2 smiles if you want to add comment. Pastor Ben, Deacon Henry, you want to say something to the men today? All right. Good morning. Good morning, Prophet Jonathan.
Oh, they count you down. 4, 3.
Yeah, I saw that. Go ahead. Uh-oh. Prophet Jonathan will come back. Pastor Ben, it's counting you down. Hello, Pastor Ben.
Hello. I would actually like to speak on both of them. One of them I would like to speak on is something that actually happened to me today on the job.
Can you talk up just a little bit so my YouTube viewers can hear you?
Well, I said that I'm going to respond to something that happened to me on the job today, and that's one of the topics, the first topic.
Mm-hmm.
I got to the job there. I was started on it yesterday, and I didn't finish it.
Mm-hmm.
This is something I was doing for the roofing company, but it was a paint job. So it wasn't finished. I got there this morning,
Mm-hmm.
and the lady told me that your paint job sucks.
Wow.
My response was, thank you for the compliment.
Wow.
Now, I remember some years ago when my response would have been different.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, thank you for the compliment.
But grace.
Yeah. Now, it turns out that she had to come back and apologize because the stuff she was talking about, the roofing guy was there. He saw that, okay, he knew what I was going to be doing today. He knew that it wasn't finished because I stopped when he told me to stop. So he explained that to her.
Mm-hmm.
So she actually came back and apologized.
That's good.
But like I said, a few years ago, my response would have been different.
I hear you.
But I wasn't even bothered when she said that. It was like, it was a joy for me to tell her, thank you for the compliment.
Awesome. Awesome
know,
keeping
and,
awesome keeping your composure in that.
yeah. I credit it to the Holy Spirit. It wasn't none of me.
Awesome.
But and the second thing, I actually do talk to. Well, I make young women aware of those situations. Let me put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
When I see situations going on, I make them aware of the situations where they are predators.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they're talking nice and everything, that means absolutely nothing. What do you know about this person?
Right.
If you know nothing, you need to check it out.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly.
So because you're right, there's a bunch of dating going on, and and many of them, like you said, many of the victims have been victims. They've been hurt.
Yep.
And that makes them vulnerable. Now,
Exactly.
I'm going to confess something. I remember before I got saved, I wasn't so much, let's say, like a predator to try and go, to just be fishing.
Mm-hmm.
But if I ran across a woman that was hurt, I knew she was vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And I would take advantage.
Yep.
Because when a woman or a man, either way,
Mm-hmm.
because I've been on the opposite end too. When you're hurt, your emotions are all over the place, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And there are times when you just don't even think. I mean, you're craving for the attention. That's number one.
Right.
It's an attention thing, and this person is giving you attention. So, okay, you're going to give in to them because they're giving you the attention. They're saying all the right things.
All the right things. Yeah.
Why? Because they've practiced it. They've become good at it.
Exactly.
So all the right things, and you begin to fall for them.
Mm-hmm.
So they are out there, both female and male predators.
Yes, I agree.
They're out there. So, and I agree with you. Don't post your stuff on social media. I've had people tell me, well, I don't do Facebook because you post all your stuff, and I say, I don't.
Right.
I say, I never post anything personal on there. Never. Mm-hmm. There's no written law or rule that says you have to post your personal experiences on there.
Please say that again.
There's nothing written, no law or no rule that says you have to post your personal experiences on social media.
Exactly. So while it is still not mandatory, you don't need to be giving away your whole life story online. And this is not just with relationships, but this is also with it can be a parent-child relationship. I see people posting things about their children online, and I'm like, with all of the missing children going on in society right now, mm-hmm. I would not be posting my children's school, my children's, their pictures of them, just those, like your intimate moments with your children, because you don't know who is looking at your page, especially if you're not using the controls and setting your post to private. A lot of people are not. They have them on public, and they don't realize that someone can take a picture that you take, and they can geotag it and figure out where you were when you took that picture. So, you have to put those privacy controls in for yourself. And a lot of times people don't have what I call self-filtering. They don't know when enough is enough, or when they're putting out too much in a setting that could come back to damage them later. My rule of thumb is, if I put something up, I am willing to defend whatever I put up or whatever I say in a court of law. If I'm not willing to defend it in a court of law, then I'm not going to put it up. Bottom line. So thank you, Prophet Pastor Ben. I'm going to see if we can get Prophet Jonathan back in. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
All right, Prophet Jonathan, let's see if we can get you back in. I think it does a 4-second countdown. So you can share with us as we close out today. See if you can press the double face again and see if it'll add you back in. All right. There we go. Great, Pastor Ben. All right. Can you speak, Prophet?
Yes.
There we go. All right.
God has released my tongue.
Talk to us for a moment here.
So much I could say. I was thinking when you and Pastor Ben was speaking, talking about the vulnerable. I've seen this evolution. I've seen where, because as men, we all have used that tactic. We learn women are emotional. We can manipulate women based off their emotions. So I think women now, I notice, if I'm in the store or if I'm working, I would see young women, particularly young Black women, and I would try to speak to basically to show Black women all men are not trying to hit on you, and then just being kind, right? How you doing, ma'am? The women took their nose up, frown up at me, hey, and I'm like, I had to ask my sisters and other Black women, I'm like, why are these women responding to me like this? And I found out that when a man says, how you doing, ma'am, or be kind, it's usually a manipulative type of deceptive way to try to get their number or to try to hit on them. So I see now, I'm so glad, that's why I said this is awesome you brought it up, because what men are doing now, they're spiritualizing it. So now it's not how you doing, ma'am, it's like, oh, the Lord told me this. The Lord told me you my wife. The Lord told me, he showed me that you're going to have a dimple like this, or the Lord told me. And it's funny, but I've seen this happen, and it throws me off. Now, my only caveat is like your story with your husband. God showed both of you all.
At the same time.
It wasn't, he came to you and said, oh, the Lord showed me you. And he's like, well, I didn't get that memo yet.
Hello.
Okay, so that is my caution. We have to use our common sense. The brain is, if I'm not mistaken, the biggest biggest muscle in our body.
I think so. Strongest or biggest.
We didn't make it the biggest for no reason. We have to use this, and we can't allow this spiritual. Just because a man says he's saved, that doesn't mean he's actually saved. And if he is saved, that don't mean he has the fruit of the Spirit. That don't mean he have a sound mind. That don't mean he ain't crazy. Take it from me. I've had a slight mental breakdown, okay? I was kind of out there now. I ain't even going to lie. I was kind of out there. And thank God people was praying for me. And I had an anchor and a root in the word that God restored me. And he's continually maturing me in all areas. Oh, and he said, I wish above that you prosper and be in good health, even as your soul. That man, he needs some counseling. He needs some prayer. He needs someone that loves him enough to say, hey, what you are doing is not healthy.
Right.
What you are doing is not holy. It's not of God. You know, he may think God is telling him, pour your heart out and that's going to attract your mate. No.
It's going to, listen, and thank you for saying that, because on the flip side of that, it may attract something, but it may not be a mate. It may be a woman who is attracted. Let me see if I can add you back in, Prophet. It may be a woman that is manipulative, that is going to prey on your desire for a mate.
Exactly.
And you may wind up with that. Exactly. while you're trying to bait for something else, or you're fishing for something else, hoping that out of all these thousands of women that you are posting this to, that one of them is going to step up. Like, that's not how this works, dude. Exactly. You could find yourself manipulated.
And I want to share this quickly. Also, when you show being vulnerable,
are you still there? I think his speaker dropped. Let me see. Uh-oh. Prophet, see if you can come back in. But one of the things that I think is happening, just in talking with you all, one of the things that I'm taking away from this myself is it's okay to be vulnerable, right? But make sure that you're vulnerable with the right person. Make sure you're vulnerable in the right place. We don't need to be giving ourselves in such a way to just anybody, right? You should value your story, value your spiritual experience, value if God is giving some things to share, if he's told you some things about your mate, if he's told you some things to pray for, if he's told you some things to pray for, write it down. We have to make sure that we're not just being vulnerable just to be vulnerable, that we're putting our vulnerability in context, because a lot of people are getting hurt because they have been vulnerable with the wrong people. Plain and simple. Whether that's romantic relationships, whether that's ministry relationships, whether that's professional relationships, being vulnerable with the wrong people can be detrimental to your life. Because number one, everybody does not know how to hold confidences. That's just the society in which we live. So you have to be careful about how you are putting yourself out on these platforms. Listen, anybody else want to chime in? I'll hold it for about 30 seconds. If anybody else wants to chime in, you can click the 2 circle icon and I will add you in. It takes about 4 seconds for you to be able to come in and talk. I know we're a little bit over time, but I did want to give an opportunity for anybody else who wanted to share on today's topic. Anybody? All right. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host today, Shantae Charles. I want to thank you for your time and attention. Remember, let's try to have more grace for each other. Let's have grace in the areas that we need to have grace and show grace. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness, so please go out today